Hey guys, it's Hannah. This week I'm going to be transforming my friend Leena's living room into a beautiful modern space. Here we go. This is Leena's living room and it's just a blank space. They've lived here for 5 years and haven't been able to agree on a design until now. We're going to do two side-by-side accent walls. So there's going to be a slat wall and then a geometric accent wall. It's going to be super modern and I think it's really going to be unique. So the first thing we're going to do is actually map out their design. I love using painter's tape to map out any design. We've got an image that we're working with, but it's really important to map it out because they're actually going to use these measurements to cut out the squares and the different sizes for their accent wall. The first thing we have to do is paint the wall. So we want to give it a nice crisp coat of paint, and we went with Cyberspace by Sherwin-Williams. There was a little bit of a concern that we didn't want the space to look too dark since we are painting two walls this color, but this is a really beautiful color. It has like a blue undertone, so it's not that dark. We ended up painting it with an 18-inch roller, and if you've never used an 18-inch roller, it is like a dream. We painted these entire walls in just 15 minutes, so that's something that you definitely would not be able to do with a regular 9-inch roller. So my recommendation is if you have big walls to paint, always use that 18-inch roller. After we got 2 coats of paint on the wall, we were ready to start with the slat walls. At first, we thought we would actually stain them. So here's the color we got.
Oh wow, that's a really like dark?
No, like I mean like it's very
orange?
That's exactly what I should have said. Yes. But instead, here's what I said. Like it's just like very pigmented, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, okay.
I just try to mix it. I don't mind this color actually.
It's a bit orangey though.
It's a bit orangey.
It is a bit orangey,
Okay.
yeah. Leena says, I don't know, Shabir.
Well, how would we?
Yeah, we knew it wasn't going to be stained that color. We instead decided to just leave it at its natural wood and seal it instead. On to installation. It's time to install the slats, and you want to make sure the very first slot is level. So don't necessarily just like butt it up into the corner and start nailing these on. We need to make sure that it's going to be really level, because if it's not, then that means all the rest of them are going to be crooked as well. So make sure you use a level. Now, unfortunately, this poplar was actually kind of warped, which we were surprised about because it's actually much more expensive than pine. So we just used a bunch of pressure and nailed it into the wall. And I'm trying to just use a few nails here. You don't want to go crazy with the nails because the wood filler never looks as good as actually the natural wood grain. Use a brad nailer. So this is a cordless nail gun, which makes it really easy and really fast to use. There's no air compressor, there's no hose. So we just put 1.5-inch nails in here, and now got the battery, and we're actually just ready to roll. And if you're wondering why I'm wearing a mask, it's because I'm actually sick, and friends always protect friends, right? So I didn't want my friends to be sick. Okay, I'm just gonna slow it down and show you how to do one. It's actually really simple, and as you can see, it's great to have an assistant because it goes really fast. I don't have to call Shabir my assistant or my partner. And so what you wanna do is you wanna make sure you have a spacer. And the spacer just ensures that every single slat that goes in is gonna be equally spaced. You don't wanna be measuring this, that is way too time consuming. So what we'll do is we'll take the slat, you butt it up to your last slat, and then you move the next one in so it's super close and tight, and then you can just nail it in. And you really want to make sure you're pushing with a nail gun so that it gets as flush to the wall as possible, because there's not going to be a stud every time you put a slat on, but by trying to press it up, you're going to try and get a nice tight fit. There. And then we'll slide it down. Okay. And then we'll move our spacer up. And you can see how tight this is because the spacer's like not even falling out. That's so bad. Now let's tackle the outlets. The first outlet was going to be really easy to install the slat around. I simply needed to cut where the outlet was going to be. So I marked above and below on the slat, and then I took it to the miter saw and I cut it. So I needed to make sure that it would have a nice fit, and then I simply nailed it onto the wall using the spacer. Leena made me laugh because she'd immediately come out and start vacuuming anytime I made a cut. Isn't that outlet just gorgeous? Tackling the second outlet was a little bit more complicated because it wasn't just going to be a straight cut. This time we had to make a template because the outlet was going to fit right in the middle of two different slats. I marked a template out of paper and then I cut it out, and then I put it against the wall again to make sure the fit was good and just adjusted the size that way. Now when I was making the template, I made sure to also make sure the spacer was there because you want to make sure it's actually going to fit perfectly with the spacer on as well. I did my first attempt on a piece of scrap wood, and as you can see, it wasn't great. I used a jigsaw, but it ended up being cut a little bit too big. So the next time, Shabir tackled it, and he actually cut it a bit small, and then he used P220 grit sandpaper to sand it right to the perfect size. And voila, don't the outlet looks amazing? The outlets were definitely the hardest part, but it's doable even for a beginner. Here's where we are today. We're gonna tackle the geometric wall. The first thing we did was map out the design using painter's tape. This is a great way to visualize and make sure you have the design that you love. After the design was complete, we made sure to take measurements of every single box and square. This is really important, and make sure you also take a picture. Now we took all these measurements to the hardware store and got them to cut as many of the pieces of wood as possible. There are some pieces that are like a Tetris piece, they're like an L shape. Those ones we had to cut down with our circular saw, but having the measurements close by was so helpful. Then we prepped the wood. We added wood filler to any of the edges where it was just unsightly or big gaps because this is plywood. And then we primed and painted all the boards. Now this took a bit of time, but it's really important to prime the boards so that you don't get the wood grain through when you actually painted it. We painted them the same color as the wall, which is Cyberspace by Sherwin-Williams. And this is just a beautiful like black color with some blue undertones. It's a really cool color. We used a regular roller and did 3 coats of paint to make sure that the wood grain really wouldn't come through. It's installation day. So remember how I said that picture is going to be super important? So we use this picture throughout the whole installation process. So the first thing we did was we took our boards and we laid them all onto the floor, making sure that the design matched up with our intended design. This took a bit of time, but really the prep work is important because it helps you make sure that none of the boards are placed in the wrong spot, because then that would mess up the whole design. There's a few things that you absolutely need that will make this project go so much easier. So the first one is a nail gun. I used a cordless nail gun because it's just so much easier and you don't have to worry about an air compressor and a hose. So this is my favorite nail gun, I'll link it below. And we used 1.5 inch nails. Now, because the wood that we're using is 3/4 inches, we want to make sure that it goes into the wall. And don't forget about your level. The last thing you want to do is put these boards up and then look back and see that some of them are a bit wonky. You see the little scraps of tape on the wall? Well, we had actually also marked out the studs, but then we found that it wasn't exactly like a perfect science where you could make sure that every board was nailed into a stud. So we tried to get some into the studs, but we also wanted to nail in a way that would minimize the nail shown as like you build up each different layer. There were also moments like this where we kind of on the fly decided to change some of the design out, and my friends looked to me as the expert, but really, this is their living room, so I didn't want to make any rash decisions for them. I really tried to keep my mouth shut as much as possible because, you don't want to ruin a friendship just over a project. As we built up the different layers of plywood, we used longer nails. So depending on how many layers you want to go with, you're going to need to add thickness to make sure that the nails go through all the different layers of wood. There also came a point where we just could not figure out what to do with the last two boards. So I actually asked Leena and Shabir to move their sofa to help them visualize like what they actually want to do in the end, so that we know that the design will flow nicely with their sofa. And this is not the one they are actually going to use. They're ordering a new one, which obviously just hasn't come yet. We also had to fill all the nail holes and do one more coat of paint before we could really call this project done. Are you ready to see the final result? This is where we started with a blank slate. And here's the after. This geometric accent wall looks amazing. It's everything they wanted. They wanted something modern, something that no one else had, and something really, really moody. And I love how they actually use a black furniture piece for their TV as well. It really helps to tie the space together, and wow, what an impact this space is now. When you walk into this space, it's a total game changer. It was a lot of fun designing this space with my friends. If you love this project, make sure you subscribe and follow along for more budget-friendly DIYs.